Alicorn Lion, aka the Yugi Konata, coming at you with another episode of Alicorn Rants. Today we're going to be talking about TCGs becoming expensive. So, for like the past week and a half, a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players been talking about, oh yeah, the game is getting way too expensive. Okay. Here's what I have an issue with this. You mean to tell me that we've went through a few years of the game being nothing but hand trap heavy, and I remember when hand traps were stupidly expensive. Like I remember Ash Blossom when Ash Blossom first came out, that shit was like $100 a piece, and you needed three of them bitches. That was $300 off of three cards going into your deck. And that was one of those things that everybody, like especially like budget players, had to do, where they had to just wait for that shit to go down. I remember Pot of Desires being like close to $100. I know like Pot of Extravagation is like $100 right now, or close to $100, or anything else like that. I mean, we've seen like a lot of stuff go to like nearly $100, $100 plus, and whatnot, and then eventually we had to wait till like the reprints went down. Remember when like remember when Dragosack came out? When Dragosack was like an $80 plus card, or like when numbered, what was it? The Big Eye XZ was like also close to $100. Now them bitches are like, I think like you can get like Big Eye for like $3 or $4. You can get like Drago Sack for like probably $4 or $5 as well. But like, remember when they were like stupidly expensive? When they were like very hard to get by, and if you pulled one out of like a pack and whatnot, like you basically made three times your money back. I remember those days. Remember Necros format when Necros first came out, and all of the most important cards out of that whole set was very short printed. I'm talking about some cards making two copies per case. There was a few cards that was making two copies per case. They were $200, $300 a piece. Like legitimately, Necros was one of the very few decks in Yu-Gi-Oh where it costs over $1,000 to make. Like most of that base rarity shit was like 800. Like most, like that's just for the fucking core was like 800 and whatnot. That makes no sense. So you mean to tell me out of all of that, we have formats where again, Necros was a near $1,000 deck, or a little over $1,000 to make that deck. And you mean to tell me now Yu-Gi-Oh is expensive? Oh no, 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 no. No, 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 no. You can't complain about this. Yu-Gi-Oh has always been expensive. It just feels like that they took it a little bit too far, because the thing that's making it expensive is short printed cards. Especially when 90% of the time, those short printed cards don't really do anything at all. Like some of them are just like fan service type cards. I'm not talking about like sexy fan service either. I'm talking about, oh yeah, I like heroes. I want to build heroes. Not because the deck is good or anything, but because it reminds me of my childhood, or some bullshit like that, or I'm just a huge fan of heroes. But yet that shit is very expensive. But here is another thing and another issue that I have with all this. How come other card games aren't really talking about this? Because clearly there are other card games that are a lot more expensive than Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, let's be real on that. There's a lot more card games that's a lot more expensive than it, yet I don't really hear anybody talking about it. Like, for a prime example, you got Pokemon, you got Magic, you got like Vanguard from time to time will get like a little bit more expensive than Yu-Gi-Oh! you got Buddy Fight and White Swords. Like all of those card or like all of those card games has some type of bullshit factor when it comes to the price range of decks. And honestly, it irritates me that nobody is really stepping up to it, or nobody is really trying to like talk too much about it, or trying to find a way to see if they can convince the company who's making said card game to fix this shit. You know, a lot of the times, especially when it comes to I would say Bushy Road in general. Like when it comes to Bushy Road card games, 90% of the time why a card is very expensive is because it's usually outprinted, or is usually like outdated or some bullshit like that. Or it'll be some bullshit where like Bushy World will wait until like a year later to give like a certain thing like support, and then like when everybody tries to buy it in the secondary market, it's kind of very high because like, oh yeah, it's way out of print and stuff like that. That shit makes no sense to me, in my honest opinion. Well, part of it does and part of it doesn't. But I mean, even look at Magic, man. Like Magic is expensive, expensive. Like let's be real on that. I always wanted to try modern format, but the issue with modern format is like the minimum deck is $500, and that shit's insane to me. Like, I never really got a chance to get into modern that much, or I never really got a chance to do anything in modern because of bullshit like that. I mean, how am I supposed to get into like how am I supposed to get into like a thing like modern or anything like that if like you have to spend so much money on a certain deck? Now, before anybody tries to correct me and say, oh yeah, well, everything's an investment, which is understandable. When you look at Magic the Gathering, you look at a format like modern format, a lot of it is more of an investment instead of when you look at something like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you're just buying shit, just be buying shit. Nah, I understand like the whole investment part though, but let's be real, like it's very hard for somebody. It's hard for a new player to get into Magic because it's like how do you convince somebody to spend $500+ on a deck, especially if they don't know if they're really going to like it, or they don't know if they're really going to like the game or anything else like that. And it's weird because like one of the major solutions is they start in standard format, but then you have all of these Magic the Gathering players, like all the veteran players talk about, oh yeah, this format is trash. Standard format is bad because you have to spend a lot of money just to play it, but you don't really get 90% of your money back because, like, once everything rotates out, then, like, 90% of the cards loses all playability, which is true in some form of fashion. Like I haven't been in the game for that long. I've been in the game since like maybe 2014, 2015. Yeah, I've been well. Actually, I would say 2015. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna just put it like 2015. I've been in the game. Um, at that particular time, your boy didn't really have any much money, so it was already hard trying to invest in Magic. And for a while, I did this thing where I was going on and off of playing a game. Like I will be playing a game for like maybe about like 2, 3 weeks, and then I won't touch the game for like maybe like 3 or 4 months or anything like that. And part of the reason is because of the financing when it comes to the game. It's very expensive, and it has like you have to spend so much money trying to play the game, and that makes no sense. That shouldn't necessarily be a thing. So, with that being said, I feel like the solution to like every card game being expensive, I feel like the major solution should be like there should be a middle ground. Like the game shouldn't be like stupidly expensive, but it shouldn't be stupidly cheap either. I think Force of Will being very cheap is one of the major reasons why it failed. But outside of that, I feel like that making the games like in the middle between being cheap and expensive is like the right way to go because it gives enough accessibility to newer players and it gives enough accessibility to like older players and everything in between. But at the same time, it doesn't lead it to where you can get like enough money to try to play the game and you can what's like the right word to say it, because part of it is basically of course the company definitely needs to make their money somehow. So by making this middle ground you have a way to make your money, but with the players in the secondary market you have a way to make it semi affordable. Like honestly, there always should be some type of budget deck to be playable in a tournament. Not saying that it should be like the most powerful thing or anything like that, but there should be like, oh yeah, this is my first time playing the game. How I don't really have too much of the funds in it, and I don't know if I'm gonna really like the game, but I want to try to go into a tournament scene and see how it works. With when you put it into that consideration, you know, when you put into that consideration, you have this middle ground. You have this middle ground to where, everybody has, where the players could be kind of happy in a way, you know? You have this middle ground to where if I'm going to go into a tournament with like some type of budget deck or something like that, I'm not going to get my cheese clapped because somebody decided to spend more money than I did. Like that never should be a thing in the first place. So honestly, I feel like that there should be some middle ground where you could where like even if you're not spending like top dollar for like the most expensive deck in the game, you can kind of sort of clash with that particular deck and not completely get killed over it because they spent money on cards that you can't afford. Like that definitely should be a thing. Like I know like Vanguard kind of sort of does that pretty well. Like there will be some decks that'll be like very cheap and then you can still kind of like clap cheeks with it. But then like every once in a while you'll have that very expensive deck that's like, yeah, if you need to beat me, you're gonna have to either play the exact same deck I'm playing, or we just you just gonna have to take this L, like because you didn't spend that much money like I did. Like it rarely gets to that particular point though, but I mean we just had a format in Vanguard where the best deck in the game was like under $100. Like that's actually pretty good. And then it kind of like jumped up to 200, but that's only because of like one of the promo cards. But honestly, like the deck by itself, like without the promo, was like 80 something bucks, and it was legitimately the best deck in the game, or in that particular format. It was like the best deck in that particular format, to a point to where at Worlds, you had like so many people playing this particular deck, it was ridiculous. Like, they had like I think what 50 people or close to 50 people or even 40 or something like that at Worlds in that one particular event, and like one fourth of it was that one particular deck. And again, his deck is like under 100, and it's like the best deck in the game. And then it's weird because it's like there's another deck that is a huge fan favorite, but it's like $300, and that $300 deck is getting his ass kicked completely by like a deck that's not even $100 yet. So that's ridiculous. Like that's something that I feel like should be a thing. Like again, the most cheapest deck shouldn't be like the most expensive, but like I feel like that meta decks and tournament decks should be somewhat accessible. Like you still have to pay top dollar for it though, but it has a middle ground. It has a middle ground where you don't have to spend too much on it though, but you have to spend some type of money on it. Like it should be that type of thing. But with that being said, honestly, that's how I see it. That's how I see it. I definitely do think that Magic definitely should do it, And Pokemon is kind of sort of doing it from time to time, but they always get into this thing where like some of their like most of the deck is cheap, but like the money really comes on whatever staple cards you're trying to get the deck with. Like for a prime example, you can get like maybe like 90% of the deck for like maybe under $10. But because like the main aspect of the deck is like $22 and $22 a piece, that's where the money comes in. It comes in from those particular pieces. But anyway, with that being said, my name is Yuki Konata, aka Alicorn Lion, signing out.